Welcome back to the Sacred Arts channel, where we talk about all things from the practical to the sacred. Today, we are meeting Asia, a seasoned makeup artist and esthetician turned rapid transformational therapist and intuitive guide. With 25 years of experience in helping women look and feel their best, Asia's journey has taken a profound turn towards spiritual awakening and healing. In 2020, Asia answered a deep calling, diving into the world of rapid transformational therapy with Marissa Peer. Through this journey, she discovered the profound impact of faith in everyday life, realizing its importance in times of uncertainty. Asia's belief in the power of the mind and the ability to choose again resonates deeply within her, inspiring her to share her insights on embracing positivity and finding beauty in every aspect of life. Asia shares her unique perspective and ideas infused with her signature blend of positivity, relaxation, and profound knowledge on today's episode. Welcome, Asia.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you, Jazzy.
I'm excited too. Can you tell us a little bit more about your spiritual upbringing and how it has influenced your personal beliefs and practices?
Yes, so I grew up in Seattle, Washington, to I like to say hippie parents, since my name's Asia and a little different. The kind of hippie parents that I joke gave me carrot juice in my bottle, and I probably didn't have a bottle ever. Grew wheatgrass, and I got to play in the garden and use my imagination. So I had very kind of magical, spirited childhood, and um, wrote songs and poems when I was young, and always immersed in that. And so I feel very blessed for that. And there's a point in life with moving and trying to fit in where you let go of it a little bit. And not I've never let go of it, but maybe don't talk about it as much, right? So I through having kids and working, I started just, you know, maturing and being myself more, and realizing that people really like to talk about that stuff. So um yeah, does that give you a briefing of?
Totally. So I'm
Okay.
I'm so curious. I'm going to poke at this a little bit because
Yes.
I also grew up in a household where it was very woo-woo. I would not characterize my household as hippie, but it was very woo-woo, where we had freshly squeezed carrot juice. We had
Mm,
all sorts of like herbal medicine that was happening consistently. It was like part of our everyday life, but we really didn't talk about it with other people. In fact, the underlying kind of messaging from family was like, we don't ever talk about what we do at home. Right. And
mm.
so I don't know if it was because of fear or is because of cultural differences or whatnot. But what I'm curious about you is growing up in a household like that, where it's very mystical, and you're really grounded in and protected in kind of that bubble. What was it like in contrast interacting with like the larger world? Were you afraid to talk about it? Did you want to just like fit in? Like, what was that like for you?
Okay, that's a good question. So I also should mention my family in Seattle are mainly Catholics, and I loved going to the Catholic Mass and all the beautiful, I still love the sign of the cross. I incorporate all the religions. So, but they weren't a judgmental Catholic family, and they aren't. And so I didn't have that element of shame or judgment. I realized that was a thing later on, and I'm still dealing with some of that. But when we moved to Minnesota, where I live now, I really did not fit in. It was a whole different world. So I actually went from Seattle to Montana, where it was very small town, to here, big school, a lot of money, a lot of sports, a lot of mainstream. And I was really weird because I dressed different. They didn't know who I was. And so that was probably one of the most 12 years old moving to a new place, right? So that was probably when the natural, what would you call it? Survival and age just to fit in, right? Because that's what we do, especially at that age. Even my name was weird. So I actually went by Marie for a little bit. So definitely there was some stuff that, I wasn't comfortable with. I would say, going to high school in the 90s, it was astrology was cool. And I learned astrology growing up, just basic sun signs, but I would see the patterns with people like, okay, Leos are this, but and you can start to put it together, right? And I would talk freely about that too, because I've always, for the most part, been myself. I always talk to my friends about all the things that I love, and a lot of my friends from childhood would say that all those spiritual aspects is what they would associate me with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
sometime doing facials. When you're in somebody's energy field, I realized people were dealing with deep grief, and sometime in the last maybe 5 years ago, I decided, well, why not just say something that they may or may not want to hear, but if it's my intuition, it could help them, because I pride myself on not saying the boring thing or what everybody else says to someone,
Mm-hmm.
saying something different.
Yeah.
And that's important to me. And so let's say somebody would say, that they were grieving someone, and I would feel prompted to ask, well, do you talk to them still? Like, do you get any signs to see? And sometimes people just light up that I was even asking that, right? So I that was just addicting, and not all the time, but also it's really easy to play little psychic games to see if you can guess people's children when you're there, because it's just small talk. But really, I'm tuning into the energy of people.
I think that this is the experience of a lot of people that are developing their intuition, right? Or even starting on this path. It's like, where do I get started? And I love how you describe that, because doing facials, it's kind of like your everyday, kind of job, but being able to tap into your intuition, and even your story about like moving to a new place and kind of hiding who you are, like even going by your middle name, like that is something that is so relatable in my opinion. um
Mm-hmm.
because at some point we do want to fit in, we do want to be part of society, we do want to be liked, right? And this woo stuff
Yeah.
might not jive so much with the
Mm-hmm.
people, but I what I loved about your story is that you always stayed authentic to yourself. You would always talk about it in the places where you felt safe, or with the people that you felt safe, and I think that that's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful message.
Thank you.
Course. What so like let's fast forward now, like it's like now 2020. Can you tell us a little bit about like what inspired you, what pushed you into hypnotherapy?
Yeah. So I went to the Aveda Institute, which is a holistic, place to get my osteology license back in '99, and have been a makeup artist and esthetician ever since. I always knew, and I would say it, I mean, for as long as I can remember, that I will spend the first half of my career helping people on the outside, which also helps bring out their spirit, and then help people more on the inside. But I actually never knew what that meant. I just knew it was so, right? So I figured it would be Reiki or um let's back up a little. I had a limited belief when it was time for everybody to go to college. Everybody had college funds. I didn't. I thought that meant, well, it's not available to me. I talk about limited beliefs because of my hypnotherapy now, but I would have 1000% done what you did, gone for psychology, because that's always been a passion, right? So,
I could see that about
um,
you. Yeah.
thank you. So yeah, that's just what I could spend all my time learning about and talking about is how people work and how to help them heal and all the intricacies of that. So, way too much school. I'm not that great at school. So, I that wasn't, my path, but um, in the beauty industry, we're all therapists in some way because we're that
Yes.
safe third party that people talk to come to with all their problems. So, side note, but I really want to help other beauty industry people because I work with a whole bunch in the studio I rent. Encourage them to share more of their gifts as well, however that looks like. But I think, so many new options are available to us in these times. So back to the 2020. So I studied a little qigong and didn't know what that meant again. But one day I woke up in the middle of the night in 2020 and couldn't sleep and got up, and not a normal behavior for me to wake to I usually sleep soundly and wake up and was scrolling on my phone, and I kind of did a double take on Marissa Peer's program, Rapid Transformational Therapy. And I was like, wait, I could do this, because it was quite extensive schooling, but I set up an interview, and I think the next day some British guy called and asked me a bunch of questions for an hour to make sure I was fit, which is good for
Yeah.
a program like that, instead of just anybody doing it. And it was a lot of work. It was over a year that I studied, and watching a lot of modules and online, practicing aspects of it. But I was just so passionate about it, so excited. It was just like a renewed sense of purpose of how to help people more. And it's always scary once you graduate because it's like, okay, now you actually have to do something with it. And so
Hmm.
I knew one thing that I needed to start talking about it. Because if you can't get comfortable talking about what you're passionate about, well, you can't go anywhere from there.
It's so
So,
true. Yeah.
yes. Are you really comfortable talking about all of your?
I am now more than
Okay.
I was before. Probably if you would have asked me this a year and a half, I would have said no. I'm all over the
Okay.
place because have you done your human design yet?
Yes, I'm a
Okay.
generator and
Okay.
emotional authority.
Okay, that's great
Yeah.
to know, right? Really good info to know. For me, I'm a manifesting generator. So I
Oh,
just look batshit crazy. I just look like I'm all over the place. I'm always doing something new, but it's because it fills my soul and it's actually what I'm meant to be doing as a manifesting generator. I'm meant to like taste all these little things, which is why I don't talk about what I'm doing until I finish it.
is that intentional? Is that like that you found that in life that is good for you? Because
It is intentional because I used to get labeled as somebody that was flaky and that would give
oh,
up
I
on
hate that.
stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of manifesting generators get looked at like that. And so now I only talk about stuff when I actually finish it. Yoga is a perfect example. Like I used to think I loved yoga because that was like the thing that was happening. But it wasn't making me feel good. And I actually wanted to do a program and I never finished it. And so I never talked about that. But for example, I just finished the Shamanic Academy, like, I don't know, 6 months ago. And now I talk a lot about that because it was something that I was able to like finish and see through. But to go back to your original question, like a year and a half ago, I would have been like, oh yeah, I do Reiki and I read human design and I'm an astrologer and I do Qigong and all these other things. And people would look at me like, what? You're just like kind of all over the place. And now I'm really able to like key in on I help people get unstuck. I help people come back to their true selves. And then if then that kind of starts the conversation
Mhm.
and people ask me about like different modalities and then I can go deeper. But
Mhm.
before it was just kind of all over the place.
I get that the manifesting generator. My 23-year-old is one, and it's also fascinating how quickly she can actually manifest things.
Oh yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Like,
people
how does
are
this
always in
work?
awe. Like Jen was just telling
Yeah.
me that a couple months ago, and I was like, yeah, well, it's the manifesting generator in me. Like,
Hmm.
don't compare, don't even try, because it's just we're a big ball of a mess, but it kind of just all falls into place the way that it's supposed to. So
Exactly. And I've had intuitive readers tell me that before too. Like, you're also just following your intuition. So don't get mad at yourself if you don't finish something, because if we value finishing, that's okay. Because if we're not following our intuition to move on, maybe it's already served what we've already
yes.
gotten what we needed from it. And it's important that we listen to that and not think that it's a thing. So I also don't like the term like, oh, you're jack of all trades, because that is so far from the truth. Because all these things, like, I see that what you do and that I do connect. They're all helping people on different levels of their being. So to me, it makes perfect sense. And I think the more we own that, but yeah, my dad did teach me to be careful about who we say things to, and my
Yes.
mom for different reasons, because people will judge you for it, they'll hold it against you, or they will. I don't really believe in jinxing, but you can tell the wrong people, and then that energy is. So I'm still working on that.
Totally, because even if it's unintentional, right? Like somebody might feel that emotion of jealousy, like, and jealousy is not a bad thing. That's just a signal that, oh, I want that, right? And a lot of people turn that into like, why does she get to have that and not me? When really the
Hmm.
perspective is a little bit different. It's like your body and your mind telling you that is something that we want. And unintentionally we might be sending that energy of jealousy, and then it breaks up our momentum, right? And so I've learned that as
Hmm.
well, like keep things quiet, only tell like certain people, like maybe my husband, or even with him sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'll tell him later once I'm done, once it's solidified.
I
uh
try that, but it's hard because
I know it is hard. And then the other thing I want to say, I like that you came up with jack of all trades, because a jack of all trades is a master of none, but
exactly.
oftentimes better than a master of one. That's the full quote.
Oh, I didn't know the final thing. Master
That's
of
the
none, we
full
don't like.
quote. Isn't that
But
crazy?
oftentimes, yeah, I'm glad you shared that with me. But so let's repeat it. But oftentimes
Better than a master
better
of
than
one.
a master of one. Oh, that makes so much sense. Thank you for finishing that for me, because now I
Okay.
won't feel on the defense if people say it. I'll remember the good part.
Yeah. I used to be
I'll
on the
share it with them.
defense too, and now I just repeat that quote. I had to look it up because I haven't said it in a long
I
time.
love that.
But
I love a
yeah,
clever response for something that we hear a lot. Like, it bothered me for a long time that people would be like, well, you don't look old enough to have, this kids or this or that. And I'm like, people are saying you're not enough. They're not even listening to what they're saying. And so I try to be very aware of words, because
mm,
words are powerful.
words are so powerful.
Hmm. And speaking of what you brought up about the jealousy thing, that's a whole fascinating subject. It's a concept not everybody has looked into, but that awareness is really an important compass, right?
Yeah.
So there's something about that person that I want to have. Maybe not this part of them, but maybe they're more organized than me. And that's something that I want for myself. And that's what I'm feeling a little twinge about, right?
Yeah.
So it's just such a good compass. Everything that we have in our life is a gift, right? And so I
It's
truly believe that.
I truly believe that as well.
It's a form of enlightenment, though, right? It can be hard to lightly explain things like that, when I really try to find ways to break it down and simplify for different levels of learning. Do you know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, totally, because everybody is on their own journey and they're at their own kind of developmental stage. And so just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like feeling into, I'm sure you do this all the time naturally, like feeling into like okay, are they ready to like talk on full on like
Yep.
tarots and magic, or are they just dipping their toe? And so like breaking it down in a way that keeps the conversation going and like minds open and hearts open. I totally get
Yes. I
it.
do have something that I decided to have full conviction on, and I say it all the time now, everywhere, and it's powerful. And I've gotten like my family members to start, seeing it's angels. So I will always talk about angels to everyone because I do feel like they're universal. And I will say, ask your angels, or that, like when they tell me a story that was an angel moment, I do like to say angels, just to remind people that we have help on the other side. And there's no coincidences, right? So it's like angels. And I just slip it in, and I feel like it's my little touch where it feels safe enough.
That's so beautiful. I love
Thank you.
that. Oh,
Yeah.
I forget, did we go through rapid transformational therapy and what
Oh,
that is yet?
not really. So it's
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about
I can,
that type of hypnotherapy?
yeah. So I have practiced summing it up because I feel like, because it is so complicated, right? How do you condense it? So, really, hypnosis is just a heightened sense of awareness where you have your alpha brainwaves, you calm mind, and then we can uncover those limited beliefs that are keeping someone locked or maybe away from what they want. So, and what I have found really, so once we've gone down some stairs and it's just a conversation with your eyes closed, we go back to scenes that have to do with the presenting problem, whatever we happen to be working on. And then scenes come up of, often from childhood, and sometimes not. Sometimes it's just 5 years ago, and that's okay. Um, I think some people, if it's a first session, they're not ready to go deeper than that.
Mhm.
Because a lot of our wounds are from childhood, right? But um, so then I have a toolbox, so a toolkit of all these little tools to help. So um, some of my favorite ones are, that's not me. So if someone was 8 and they were lost, I will say, repeat after me, that's not me. I'm not 8. I'm 28, and I never get lost because I know, so we say some affirmations. Sometimes we say to someone that hurt us, like, how dare you? I deserved better than that. And that is sometimes what was missing, because we naturally forgive our parents or understand, because we depend on them. So, so it's complicated, but uh, it can help with anything from smoking to losing weight to just general anxiety to sleep, success, so many things. And I'm not somebody who likes to say you need this many sessions.
Right.
I definitely leave it up to the person to decide. And I've done 3 on a handful of people, and I feel like those are the most transformative results. But
I was just going to ask because I used to be that person with Reiki, and I would be like, it's totally up to you. You have to listen to your internal self. But the people that I've noticed the most transformation and that have given themselves a chance are like people that have come in 4 more times, that are
and
consistent about it. You know what I mean? So
and
I
can
was
you
just
say
gonna
it just like that? And have you said it just like that? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, I say that now as of probably 2 months ago, because
Okay.
after doing this for 3 or 4 years, I'm like, you know what? I think that the answer I'm giving is incorrect, because people will oftentimes not either not come
Mm-hmm.
back or come back maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But the people that come back every single week for like, let's say 2 or 3 months, they have the most benefits, if you will.
Absolutely. I totally can see why. And I did have a client that's told me her Reiki person said she needs to keep coming every week, like for an extended period of time, which I was like, but then I'm like, okay, this is getting passed through her to me. She might have not even said it that way. I'm not going to judge it. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
I
yeah.
had to filter it through my, but again, back to that thing we talked about earlier. Maybe it gave me a little twinge, like, why is she doing that? Because I need to work on how I'm suggesting it and
Yeah.
maybe suggest more, right? So we should always be looking at this.
Well, I mean, for me, it was like this limiting belief, and you know about this limiting belief for me because
Mm-hmm.
we did a session together. It's about like it was all around money, and like I don't want to appear like somebody that's just money grabbing or that's like trying to take advantage of people. But after
Mm-hmm.
seeing the results, I mean, people from, that have had cancer or that have had or are working through trauma that have come through me, or even I had somebody that had like broke their shoulder and the doctor had said that it was going to take them like 9 months to get well. They came to me every single week, and the doctor still has no idea how she was able to heal in just 3 months. Right. And so the consistency I think is there, but also like um speaking the truth, not from fear of like it's a money grab, but more of like we're here to help people and we're here to be of service type of thing.
Right, exactly. Definitely getting comfortable suggesting more. And that is, I love those stories because I 1000% believe in, and that person willing to come back, they were ready to heal because they're showing that willingness. So you can see that.
And that's the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
As healers, as people that are performing these services, we're actually not healing anybody. We're just the conduits in
Exactly.
helping them kind of heal themselves. So the person has to be open and willing as well, and not expect
Mm-hmm.
that someone else is going to do it for them.
Yes. And so that helped me with my confidence in my RTT sessions, because I can, say, and I believe like I'm not doing anything magical. You're doing all the work, and that feels better, right? There's no pressure in a way. But I'll finish like kind of the process because I get sidetracked really easily. RFPI is, we ask maybe like there's a headache issue that's reoccurring. Like, repeat after me. I'll say, I'm the part of Peter that has headaches, and the reason I'm in his life is to finish the sentence. And people always come up with an answer. It's
Hmm.
fascinating. Oh, especially those like headaches or stomach aches, because the mind body connection is so real. And so what I love is, even if people don't come back and help them mildly, I know that I've helped them with their mindset. So now I've opened up their awareness of the mind body connection, right? Or of some of those things they just needed to acknowledge from their past that they never looked at. Um, for the first time, I used a tool recently called installing the cheerleader, and it was to combat her inner critic. And that was very strong. And so I was like, oh, I get to use this for my toolbox. It was just like, kind of like, hello, please pick me, cheerleader. I'm like, I've never used you before. Okay, I'll do it. So it was
Oh
like
my
9
God, I
tools.
love that.
Yeah. So that's kind of how my intuition works these days. It's like I get a nudge and I'm like, no, and then it's like kind of yelling at me, in my mind's voice. But so at the end, there's a reframe. So we reframe those limited beliefs, and then there's a transformation recording that's recorded and that I give to the client to listen to for 21 days. And I don't listen to it because I'll never send it if I do. I just
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's really great because I've experienced your session in the past, and I will say there was resistance. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, there was resistance. However, once I was able to get past that resistance or able to get to a point where I would consistently listen to it, And to this day, I'm still listening to it. So many things opened up. Like
Yay.
I stopped impulsively buying. I stopped spending so much money. I started really looking at my finances. And finances to me is like it would make me nauseous. It would just
Mm,
make me so stressed out. And now it's like just this habit that I've developed where I'm not scared anymore and I'm able to really realistically look at things so that I can now move forward on a path that it's healthier for me from a
I love
financial
that.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because I don't even, it was a while ago. I don't even remember any of the details or what was in that recording, you know?
yeah.
So, but thank you for saying that because I have noticed though, the long-term effects from even one session. So, for example, one of the first people, when I moved into solo where I rent my studio, I was so excited and I was being really courageous and I overheard somebody talking about their smoking habit and they couldn't quit. And I didn't even know her. And I ran up to her and I was like, can I please try this for you? And um, every time she sees me in the break room, still she gives me a big hug. And she did quit smoking, but it took a while. And she's like, no, you can say it works for smoking. And she's totally giving me credit, which I don't give myself any credit.
Yeah.
It was her journey. But it was, it had to be, she's a stubborn person. It had to be on her terms, on her idea, but she needed this dental work. And I was just so happy for her that she could get that dental work and she's still not smoking. And I'm just so, and those concrete results are always nice to have because a lot
Yeah.
of times they're more subtle, right?
No, for sure. I mean, and I think the flip side of that is also like us as people that are in service, we can beat ourselves up for something not working, but in reality, we are just the conduits. We are, yeah, the experts and the people that understand the process, but we're also we're kind of there to be able to guide someone, but at the end of the day, they have to do the work and they have to be ready for the work. And when we first did it and wanted to be ready, there's always going to be resistance, even if you are ready. I think there's always going to be resistance because the mind is like, hold on, there's something different going on. I don't like it. Hold the phone. Right. And so once we get past that resistance and we really, really want that change, people like you really can change lives and transform lives into what we deserve and what we really want out of this lifetime because I think we get so lost and we don't realize that there's so many other modalities out there and there are so many ways for us to be able to make a true change.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
And that reminded me of something important you said, and then I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
No. Um, but oh yes, the mind thing. Okay. So one of my favorite things to remind people is no, it's just hard because it's not familiar. And our mind prefers what's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So we just so if you realize, well, that's just my default, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just used to it. So until we change that, we can make what's unfamiliar familiar. And then it's just a habit, right? So there's so much science and psychology around this, and really everything connects. So I think doctors, psychologists are all starting to see, the whole holistic.
Some of them, yeah,
So,
I would agree with that.
well, doctors, we have a long way, but baby
I
steps.
I do want to get into your intuitive reading skills
Mm-hmm.
and your new things. But before we get into that, I want to ask one more question because I often look at different hypnotherapists, right? I know somebody that does like Dolores Cannon's uh
Oh,
hypnotherapy. I know people that do past life regressions. I know people that do
mm.
some other type of hypnotherapy. What is the main difference in the
Mm-hmm.
rapid transformational therapy?
So that's a really good question, and one that I probably don't know because I haven't studied all the other ones, right? So I do know that the one of the reasons it's called rapid is because of that induction. I've heard that a lot of, I don't know, again, to speak to other ones, but a lot of times it's like a long induction, meaning getting into that relaxed state, getting into hypnosis is like a half hour. It shouldn't take that long.
Ah,
So that's a
you're
big
so
thing right
right.
there.
You're so
Okay, because,
right because I
oh,
remember
really?
thinking during our session, like, wow, that was fast and that was different because I've done past life regressions and I've done other types of hypnosis, but yours was very different. It was very efficient and I was able to get
Okay.
in deep fast.
Oh, good. Okay. So I just specifically learned that technique. Here's something really ironic though. Side note, but when I visited my friend childhood, my only childhood friend in Florida that I was little with, and I hadn't seen her for maybe 5 years, and I was just studying. And I told her about it, and I always thought she was so much smarter than me because she just was studious, could remember things. And she goes, "Don't you remember when you were little and you made me hypnotize you and we counted back from 100 to?" I thought, I'm like, "What? I don't remember that at all. Are you serious?" She was positive. She was like, "Oh yeah, we used to do that." I'm like, "Where would I get such an idea? I have no idea, and I don't remember." But I thought that was interesting.
You've done this before. You've done this in like a
I
past
know. I
life,
totally
or
must
you
have.
were like, I truly believe that when children play, they're playing to what's like to come
Yes,
or what because I remember straight up as a kid, like being a businesswoman and like having this fake telephone and like writing checks and I don't know. And then I grew up to be a VP of
I
operations
love
at
that.
a tech company, right? And I was
I
just
love it.
weird. Oh, and the check part, I used to be in banking. Like I used to do online banking or
Mhm.
whatever. And I would think back and it's like, oh, that's weird. And then I would line up like my teddy bears and I would teach them
Mhm.
stuff and
Yes.
love teaching.
Yes. I know. I'm totally
So
teaching.
that childhood play, right? It like tells you, I
Mhm.
don't know, it's so interesting to watch children
Okay.
play.
So thank you for my going with my all my sidetracks. I appreciate it. It's fun. Okay, so the Dolores Cannon is fascinating human. I could, study her for the rest of my life and probably not even I
Yeah.
don't know what hers is all about. I can imagine. And then past life, I had never done past life regression. I've always been interested in my philosophy today because we are always evolving. I experienced it recently. And just I'm still kind of at the same conclusion. I just don't personally think it's always necessary for everyone because
I
it
agree.
can be confusing. Okay.
I,
And it might not serve where we're at today. Because I
I
when I
agree.
did have it, I found it fascinating, but I stayed up all night down the rabbit hole trying to research this time where it was and the arc. And I was like, well, this is a drain of my energy actually, because
Mhm.
I can't really solve it. I can't put it together and I kind of want to. So I don't know. For some people, it might be like if they have this for one of my daughters, I feel like it would be good for her. I don't know why. It's just an intuition, but there's something left over. But I don't know if it's for everyone, and it might not be as rapidly healing. Okay, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, in like in the psychology world, like we tend to stay in the now and in the present, and they no longer teach like going back to childhood or anything like that
Oh,
unless it's going
good
to
to know.
serve a purpose, right? And
Okay,
there's like a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. I don't know if you've ever read it.
I've heard of that. I don't think I've read
It's
it.
it's a very short book. It's a
Okay,
phenomenal book.
okay.
And it's about the man that founded the past life regression because he did a regular
Oh,
hypnotherapy session for a woman who was in like a survival state. She was sleeping in her closet and she
oh
didn't know
gosh.
why. And he asked her during the regression, like he didn't know past lives was not even like on the table, but he asked her a very specific question. He asked her to go back to the time when that specific trauma happened. And he
Hmm.
asked her to describe all these things. And it so happened that she was in a past life.
That makes sense.
When I went to my past life hypnotherapist, she specifically asked me, like, why do you want to do this? Because as somebody who
Mm,
studied psychology, you very much know that by going back, it might hurt you even more. It
mm,
might, like you said, drain your energy. It might not serve you a purpose. And I was very adamant. I was like, you know what? I have tried to look for all of the answers in this lifetime. And I strongly believe that this issue that I'm working through happened in a lifetime beforehand. And after that session, it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulder because I could
Good.
understand where it came from and what had happened. It's like, okay, well, I can forgive that. It has nothing to do with this lifetime. And I was able
Yeah.
to move forward. And
Fascinating. And rapid transformational therapy, I wouldn't offer that ever just because of I consider that like my scope of practice. Like I haven't learned that. But a couple people have gone into a past life. And it was one time was obvious and one it was kind of weird and scary for some reason. So I actually didn't I do follow my intuition with how many scenes. I didn't take her to a third scene, and some people I'll do like up to 5 scenes sometimes. I really just follow my intuition, which leads to how one of the reasons I discovered how important those gifts were because a lot of that comes through when I'm in an RTT session with someone.
that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't expect that. But when I did another training, because I always like to do extra learning when if I'm going to enter into anything new, it just makes me feel credible, even if I don't need it, right? So at one of the very last 15 weeks, the last week, it was like she would talk, my mentor would talk for a long time, and I don't sit still for two. So towards the end, all of a sudden, I was kind of zoning out for a moment, and then all of a sudden, I perked right up because she started talking about getting into like your channel or your center and like just feeling the difference. So then it hit me when I do the RTT sessions and I take, because I always breathe. If I say take a deep breath, I'm going to breathe with you, right? And then I'm talking down the stairs. So I'm putting myself into the right receptive state to receive. So yeah, I know you totally get it.
That makes sense. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's it. That's why
You're
it works.
in the journey with them. And so that's,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes it all aligned. I'm really curious to like know about this new path that you're taking with the intuitive readings. I know this is something that new that you've added to your services. Can you tell us a little bit about what led you down that path and where are you at now with it?
Yeah. So I really, like I said, anybody that my clients, friends, family, everybody that knows me knows I have strong intuition gifts, and it's something I like to help other people tune into as well. So, but I like to credit my two esthetician friends who I got close with in 2017. And they've always really encouraged that about me and said, Asia, what do you think about this? Tune in. And I'm like, well, why? Why? Well, because they know that I can't. And so, um, what was it that hit me one day that I had to? Like, I know my aha moment with, well, I always knew I wanted a mentor. Like I said, that's what it was. If I
Ah,
was going to go into it, and I'm a firm believer in when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
yep.
So for years, I guess I've been looking around like, oh, I wonder who's in that shop. If that's who my mentor is. And I've always figured it'd be somebody in the flesh. And this woman lives in Canada, but now we can do all kinds of things through. So I I knew then that I was like, okay, that's the mentor for me, and um that's where I'm at now. Just when I finished RTT, it's like bittersweet. It's like now I'm stuck with the hardest part, which is implementing it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just laughing at myself because something interesting came on strong in the last couple of weeks. And because I have no filter, my family, my household thoroughly knows about this. So, but it's animals. So dogs, I really can communicate with dogs, but I'm not even a dog person. I've never had a dog, which is really weird. What the I'm like, why me? Like I'm not even a dog person, right? So I was with some friends a week ago, and especially little dogs. I'm just like, this little dog, annoying dog, right? But as we were hanging out, he came over to me, and then I was like, oh, okay. Like, there's some messages for mom. Let's share them, because, these are all older women, and they were all very accurate. And then the other dog snuggles up to me and is like, I'm like, do you want to talk to? And then they totally get into it, and like, they're just tuned into me, right? And like, okay. So, and then ironically, it's the last couple of weeks, I was at a beauty cabinet retreat, one of my businesses, and somebody's talking about how their dog won't go up the stairs. I'm like, why do I have to hear this? I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. But I did. I'm an overshare. And so, her dog, Vincent, I woke up the next morning thinking Vincent really he needs some help. So talked to her. She's like, maybe I'm gonna go take my daughter to look at some colleges, and I don't know this woman. She, met her at the street. I'm like, do you want me to come? I have a slow day. Do you want me to come go on a walk with your dog? I'm like, I'm losing my mind, right? I'm like, can't even believe myself. And I'm like, she's like, well, I am going out of town. I would really love that. Can we do it next week? I'm like, absolutely. So I'm like, okay, like, kind of talking to the dog in my head, like, all right, Vincent, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to give your mom a sign. I don't know what it is. So she texted me that night. I just got out of yoga class, and she goes, the weirdest thing happened. I went for a walk with my dog and ran into a neighbor that said she had an animal communicator meet with her dog, and she loved it, and that this woman's name is Asia. It's not me. I'm like, and she's like, oh, I thought it must be you, because who else has that exact name and spelling? And she's like, but then I remember you saying this isn't something you do. And this woman, so I looked her up, and she's a beautiful human who has her name's, I know, Asia. I know her last name because I looked her up a week ago. It'll come to me. But so then I was like, well, why animals? And I can't just go over to everybody's house. So like you said, we're not going to jump on it right away and change our whole, but there's something there. And it could be to connect me to this woman. But I think reading her website, which I can share with you later, but it's a tool. The dogs are tools to help you're already getting it, right? The owners tune in, because people get busy. The animal knows everything.
Yeah.
So I finally just, texted her. But I said, Vincent, I'm like, what's the most important thing? He's a little disturbed by some family dynamics that have changed in your household without knowing anything. And so that resonated. And so maybe that is going to open up, right? She's like, actually, yeah, he usually is happy when we're all together. So maybe that opens up a door for him. But I don't know what's going on, but it's like, once I accepted it, there's been a lot. So I'm trying to figure out how to hone it all in.
I love that. And it might not just be that you're an animal communicator, but also you're here to like be of service, right? And a lot of the times human beings don't want to be seen. And so even if somebody goes to like a tarot reader, for example, if they're totally closed off and they're like, well, we're just going to test this psychic and like, we're not going to give anything, like the tarot reading is going to be totally off because we all have free will and it's not going to come through clearly, right? So if you're talking to this woman and she doesn't want you to know that she has like problems going on, guess what? It's going to be a lot easier to get the information from the animals that live in the
Yes.
household
Yes,
than it is
exactly.
from the human being.
Exactly. So, like, back up to that other party, the little dog, one of the things he was saying was, I used to like it. He says he used to like it when you went upstairs to meditate by a window and he would sit with you. That's what the dog wanted to say. So, like you said, reminder for her practice.
Oh,
So they often will talk about simple things like their food or who they cuddle with, but then there's some really sweet, very sweet, intuitive messages. But yeah, So,
Oh, I love
um, yeah. So yeah, they're just, it's like a safe, because everybody loves their animals. And so it's like a safe third party where we can make it about the dog. Yeah. It takes pressure off of the person, like so intensely. Like, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. So it's a little journey, but I think, okay, well, when I did learn in this program, I did learn tarot, which is fascinating and powerful and connects to our subconscious and all that. Um, I definitely was getting too in my head trying to figure out what the cards meant.
Yeah.
And I'll
We
leave
all do
that to the
that.
tarot, yeah, to the tarot readers, because it's a whole art. And I know that some of the best people actually, because there's a science to it and so much meaning, if they study that, they might not even think they're very psychic, but the cards will bring it out in them, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
for me, I think I get in that logical mind, like and then it's like a different part of my brain for my intuition. So for me, I do best with the pictures and the feelings that I get. So I'm really good at reading like the emotions that are in somebody's energy field.
Mm.
Yes, and you have very beautiful
Thank you.
emotions.
Oh, thank you so much.
um, and children, I just always
Oh,
see the children.
mhm. Yeah, same here. Like
Hmm.
pets, even animals, like I get a lot of hummingbirds that come and like buzz my tower a little bit every now and
Oh,
again. We have a lot of
cool.
animals here. So we have a bobcat that rolls through every now and again. We have a little fox that comes through and likes to peek in the window.
Cool.
The hawks were following me for a while a couple years ago.
That's a psychic energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the bunnies, like one of them let me hold them. It's been wild, but you're right. Like, first of all, animals can read energy for sure, and so can children. And it never ceases to amaze me when owners, like, I go over to somebody's house and they're like, "Oh, like my dog never likes people," and I'm like, "Well, they've never met me."
Right? Yeah, exactly. They totally tune in. And the animals, I love looking up like the spirit animal
Yeah,
meaning,
me
because
too.
it's so available. And that's another thing to share with people. And really, because really, like, just teaching people to pay attention to how the universe is communicating with us, right? So when
Ugh,
my girls were growing up, I'd always be like, look at the moon, like look at it, like let's admire these things. Um, and they're sweet. Now that they're older, they give me a lot of credit for all those magical things.
that's so beautiful. I love that.
Thanks.
Um, I want to dive a little bit into how do you like balance your spiritual beliefs, hypnotherapy practice, intuitive abilities with like your everyday life, like, being an esthetician and just like how do you manage all of that?
Hmm. I it comes pretty naturally, because to me it all intertwines. But so I've uncovered new limited beliefs of my own, right? Because it's like you recognize them, you work on them, and then it's like, oh, here's a few more like to reveal. So mine is more about like technology and websites and my bio, like things like I don't know how to do it. I'm not smart enough to, so as far as working with people, that comes very naturally. I still am so used to women that I've had a few RTT male clients, and I think that's really important these days, especially in those young males. But um yeah, I don't know if managing it. Okay, I'll tell you one thing is managing my energy, because I'm very sensitive to energy and sound and
Mm,
environment. So my husband is so sweet to mute all the commercials if the TV's on for me, because I can't hear the commercials. I have to have, dimmers and all that. So I'm a little bit particular, and he doesn't mind. So
that's so
that's
sweet.
really good. But so managing, the energy and environment, I think, is what I feel like I have to manage with clients. it's going to be a whole interesting world. As far as skepticism, I feel like I have nothing to prove.
Yeah.
I know who I am.
Yep.
So not interested, right, in trying to prove or explain anything if somebody isn't coming from a place where they're, I mean, people generally perk up about things like that. And if they, my intuition is pretty right on with when things are safe to say. And I've gone through times where I've doubted it, and then I've realized I was right on. So I shouldn't, I'm human, I'll doubt, but I'm tuned in because of working with people, so many people doing their makeup or having conversations of, and then wedding makeup got to me. That got too hard after a while because I could just, the high stress, and I could really read everything that they're feeling inside that they're not saying. If somebody's willing to come get a facial, at least they're willing to relax.
Yeah. It's so true. And
Yeah.
you're not dealing with all these expectations, right? Like weddings is just like very high expectations on that day, right? And it's so like everybody's on edge. So I
Mm-hmm.
totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I love that you express managing the energy is like the most important. Because as you were saying that, I was just going back in my head into like, I was visiting a friend a few months ago, and her husband had the TV on really loud in one area, music blasting throughout the house. I had to literally look at him in the eye, and I was like, "Excuse me, do you think that we can either do one or the other, but maybe not both?" And I was so proud
I
of
would have said
myself
that.
because I was just like, I need to ask
Yo,
what I
yes,
need because this is a lot. And there were
1000%.
yeah, and there were other people visiting, so there was like a lot of energy, and so now I'm like really good about asking about what I need. And even I love that you guys mute the commercials. Because my husband knows also. So we don't mute them, but he like lowers it, or
All good.
I voice like, this is
Mm-hmm.
a lot right now, or this is not the type of energy that I need to be in right now. Can we change this type of
Mm-hmm.
situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really important to just ask. And for some reason, it reminds me of the importance of just lovingly saying things, whether it's something you feel like somebody needs to hear that's hard to say. In Minnesota, we have this Minnesota nice. You don't know, but it's not that nice.
it's
It,
like it's like bless your heart in the South. It has like six different meanings.
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we'll be really polite, but we'll never say what we're really thinking. We'll like pretend we're welcoming you, but we won't tell you what the address is. So it's and I've gotten used to it, but it's a good way to bond with the client that had to move here from a different place because it can be very clicky. And my point, I guess, is somebody just, yeah, I can think of a few examples, but it's like if you feel moved to say something, lovingly suggest something, suggest it. We're all helping each other,
Yeah,
right? So I think I value that in my friendships, and I think people value like hearing my actual opinion if you know if it's going to serve them. So
totally.
I think we all need to practice saying what we want and need and what might help someone.
Yeah. Tell us about your offerings. Where can people follow you? How can they know about upcoming events or things that you're doing?
Yeah, I wish I had some events coming up. That sounds fun. I have so many ideas. um, but I am on Instagram mostly for social media. Um, and that's Asia Marie Beauty. So that's my business name, and asiamarie.com. I'm revamping my website right now, but I have links on my Instagram um, of how to book. And yeah, I'm right now scheduling like 30-minute soul guidance,
Mhm.
and it's just I might bring in some numerology or just kind of seeing where it flows and helping people connect to maybe even as you can tell, I'm a suggestion person, so I also think it's important for to incorporate play into
Yes.
people's life, whether it's dance or movement or art. And I feel like that is a really good way to get connected to your
Oh,
spirit and your intuition and to have that quiet time to listen. So some of my mottos are like, you know, the answers, just listen and yeah, and choose again. So it's okay if you have that thought, you can choose another better thought or another way of saying something or another perspective.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm going to link all of
Yeah.
that down below as well for people
Okay.
to for it to be easy for people to follow. And thank you so
Okay.
much
Thank
for
you.
coming on
Thank
and
you.
sharing
That was
your
so fun.
wisdom. For our
Thank
listeners,
you.
if you enjoyed this episode, please comment down below, like and subscribe, and definitely follow Asia. And I will see you on the next one.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of our Patreon members for supporting the podcast and making all of this so possible. When you join the Patreon for just $3 a month, you support the learning and continuous programming of this podcast. Join today to get insights on before and after conversations, extra footage, and extra episodes. Join today on Patreon.